Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cannabis Conference webinar, How to Launch a Social Consumption Lounge, also produced by Cannabis Business Times, Cannabis Dispensary, and Hemp Grower. I am Cassie Tomaselli. I am our conference programming director for Cannabis Conference, and I'm so excited to be facilitating this conversation today. I will be introducing you to our panelists here in just a moment. However, I just wanted to go over a couple housekeeping notes. So we will be talking for about 45 minutes or so, and then we are going to allow for 15 minutes of live Q&A at the end of the webinar. So please feel free to use the chat function or the questions box to submit your questions, and we will try to get to as many as we can before the end of the program today. Also, if you are unable to make today's recording live, or if you need to jump out for any reason, no worries at all. We are working on having this recorded for you, and we will have it sent along to you via email after the webinar has concluded within about a day or so. Lastly, I wanted to provide a bit of an update on our annual in-person event, which is Cannabis Conference. We will be at the Paris, Las Vegas in Nevada from August 23rd to the 25th, 2022, of which one of our panelists today, Mason Walker, is a part. We are so excited to host about 4,000 industry professionals, 230 exhibitors, and 90 plus expert speakers at this live event catered exclusively for plant-touching businesses here in the space. We will have about an 85,000 square foot exhibit hall, 2 keynotes, and a lot of fantastic networking opportunities, so you don't want to miss this event. We have a big pricing deadline coming up at the end of this week, which is Friday, April 29th. You can save up to $500 off of our on-site rates by registering before Friday at midnight. And for all of those who are here on the webinar today, we are offering a special promo code that is social10. So if you use that promo code before midnight Eastern time on Friday, you will get an additional 10% off of your registration. So that's about it from me. I'm very excited to introduce now our panelists today. We have Mason Walker, owner of the Hemp Bar in Portland, Oregon. We have Kyle Moon, who is the owner of the Summit Lounge, which is in Worcester, Massachusetts. And then we also have today joining us Sara Stewart, the project specialist for experiences at Green Thumb Industries. Thank you to all of our panelists today for being here. We're excited to facilitate this discussion.
Thanks for having us.
So I'm going to dive into our first question today, which is really just a background of each of your careers in the cannabis industry, as well as some of the work that you're doing now. Sara, how about we start with you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sara Stewart. I have been in hospitality now for about 15 years, come from LA nightlife and events. In 2019, I was actually poached from Tao and was invited over to be the GM of America's first cannabis cafe, Lowell Cafe. We served food and beverage alongside cannabis, which was the first in the country to do so. It was quite a learning experience. From there, I used a lot of my skills and my experiences to create a company called Hospitality. We helped license holders with SOPs, protocols and procedures, anything to get you up and running for the social license consumption lounge models. And then last year I joined Green Thumb Industries full-time. So now I'm working in a couple different markets with them, helping the on-site experience and opening consumption lounges across the US. And that's about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sara. Kyle, can you share a little bit about the Summit Lounge?
Yeah. So I'm Kyle Moon. I'm the owner / operator. I'm actually technically the clerk of the Summit Lounge. We're a private membership association. We opened about 4 years ago. My background in cannabis started a lot longer than that. I was about 14. I smoked my first joint and realized people like this just as much as I did. And that's pretty much when my career started. I've been in the legal industry since we opened the lounge. My I'm a person in long-term recovery. My house was actually rated for cannabis cultivation in 2011, and I began my journey in recovery. I worked for DPH, the Department of Public Health, for probably a year and a half, 2 years, doing grant infrastructure building. And then I made the transition out of private health consulting and into the cannabis space for the opportunities, the community. It's amazing. And that's where the lounge began.
Thanks, Kyle. Absolutely. Mason, on to you.
I'm Mason Walker, one of the co-founders and CEO of East Fork Cultivars. We're an Oregon-based, family-owned cannabis and hemp company. We manage a 33-acre farm in Southern Oregon, where we grow about 10 acres of floral hemp and adult-use cannabis for the Oregon market. We're also plant breeders, and we last year opened Hemp Bar. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary, which is a physical extension of all of our programs. And in Portland, it's a small format, 600 square foot, all ages, alcohol-free bar, stylized after Amsterdam cafes, coffee shops, if you will. It's been an interesting experience, and especially as an organization that has its main footprint just in the business-to-business space, not interacting directly with the consumer end of the business. It's been a real, really exciting opportunity to further some of our values around normalization and accessibility. I came into the space, I was a journalist for 7 years and had a personal interest in cannabis professionally and personally, and entered the space, and it's been 5 years of experience. It's felt like a lifetime. Really excited to also speak at Cannabis Conference in Las Vegas this summer, and hope to see many of you there as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mason. And each of you brings such a nuanced and interesting perspective to the industry. And many of you have different business models from the different areas in which you operate, some by choice and some by necessity. So I really wanted to dive into this first question, which is, can you each please describe the regulatory structure of social consumption lounges in your state, or states in the case of Sara? Just want to kind of talk about, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what are some of the restrictions that you have in the places where you operate. Maybe Sara, you have a little bit more ground to cover, so why don't we start with you again?
Sure. Right now I'm operating in 3 different states. California is the first one. Not operating there actively, but I am very familiar with the licensing there. West Hollywood actually issued their licenses in 2018. It's now 2022, and there's only 2 lounges that have been open since then. We can see that it's quite a long haul to get this up and running, and it's because a lot of the models and things that are in place right now aren't totally translating. For instance, West Hollywood has a series of different licenses. You can have an edibles only lounge, you can have a smoking lounge, or you can have a little bit of a mixture of the 2. During the pandemic and just a bit before, the license holders for the edibles only lounges kind of lobbied back to the city and said, in the state, and said, we don't feel like we have a fair playing field here. So they have kind of, lobbied back in order to receive a different structure of lounges. So what started off as like individual edibles lounges, individual smoking lounges, have kind of all started to come together to have a solid model with a certain amount of square feet for smoking versus a certain amount of square feet for edibles only. That has been pretty specific as far as I'm concerned to California. I don't know, you guys might have seen that in other states as well, but that is really the biggest difference, I think, in California. Also, a lot of them are approving immediately these food and beverage based models, which are going to look more like restaurants maybe than what we've seen some of these others that are connected to a dispensary. A good example of one that is connected to a dispensary is Illinois, where I just worked on a lounge that opened on 4/20. Lounges in Illinois are actually grandfathered in as long as you have a dispensary license. Therefore, that means you pretty much have to be connected to a dispensary in order to obtain a consumption lounge license unless you are not doing any on-site sales, which would essentially just look like a place where you can legally go to consume and you bring in all of your own products. Then we have Nevada, which is completely different from both of those states, and they're really forcing those single serving limits on just about every lounge that's opening up, which means you can no longer go into a dispensary and purchase an eighth and take it into the lounge and to consume it. You will have to purchase a single serving limit of, let's say, 1 gram per person per transaction, so that the whole process replicates a hospitality setting, maybe like a bar with ordering a beverage or a shot. So although it is early stages in Nevada, their lounge, structures are going to look more like that single serving, items that cannot be purchased in a dispensary, but only in this particular space. Whereas the other markets that we've been seeing come about, have different models where you're just buying the cannabis and bringing it in, or they're trying to model it more or less like a restaurant of sorts. So I hope that's not confusing. It really is totally different state by state. And for what it is worth, I do think the Nevada model of the single serving limits, those ideas I think are going to start to be adopted by other states. And then we're going to see that kind of structure moving into a more uniformed lounge model.
Absolutely. And a super interesting point there, Sarah, on single serving models. Kyle, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience in Massachusetts? Again, you operate a kind of a private membership lounge, quite different from the facilities that Sarah's working in. Can you just describe the nuances of that program in Massachusetts and what that may look like in the future?
Yeah, so Massachusetts is very heavily regulated. I don't think that's at any fault to the regulators. I think that's kind of they pitched a walk before you run type of model where they'd set up, the cultivation, manufacturing, labs, dispensaries, and then they initially everyone voted on also having at-home delivery and social consumption. So now we're at the point where we have a healthy foundation for the industry. So we are starting to look at delivery. Delivery just became legal. They finalized the regulations. All that's left is social consumption. Now, so the lounge isn't for, say, a social consumption establishment. We're actually a private membership association, and we allow our members to consume anything legal in the state of Massachusetts, which cannabis is legal to consume in the privacy of your own home. So we created a model where our members come together as a community. We serve them intellectually and socially, and they bring their own cannabis, right? And we provide snacks, drinks. We added a coffee bar during COVID. And moving forward, I think we're going to look at like what Sara was saying with the single servings. There's a lot of debate around, safe consumption, drug driving. There's, obviously there's a lot of concern from the community as well as the regulators. And I think that they can all be mitigated, but, it's a long hike there, right? So currently the lounge, we offer rentals for different glassware. We have different events to serve the community, whether they be either educational or social. It's a really interesting regulatory model because we're not, so the Cannabis Control Commission is what regulates the cannabis industry in Massachusetts, and we're currently not regulated by them. We're regulated not really by the state, we're regulated by the municipality which we're located in. So Worcester, and I think the whole industry is it's working with your local regulators, to find out what they want and what they're comfortable with, and then how you can operate, a financially sustainable model, right? And Massachusetts, at least with us in the municipality of Worcester, has worked out. We have around 7,000 members on an average week. We see around 100 to 200 people. And it's an interesting model. It's financially constraining because we're a nonprofit, so we can't sell cannabis products too, which is financially constraining as well. And I'm interested to see how the regulations play out for social consumption in Massachusetts. Every town has to opt in to social consumption. So Worcester and their city has to opt into social consumption. Boston has to opt into social consumption, and there was a regulatory fix that was needed where there was no mechanism for these municipalities to opt in. So I think they've kind of worked through that at the state level, given these towns the opportunity. Now the Cannabis Control Commission is going back, finalizing their regulations. they finalized some regulations, which I'm hesitant about, but they are what they are at this point, and hopefully they're looking to amend them. I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's going to be interesting. And then social equity plays a huge part in Massachusetts, so they allowed social equity applicants to have kind of a jump start where they're priority licensing for the first 2 years. So unless you're a social equity applicant, you can't obtain one of these licenses for 2 years. So, and that's for delivery and social consumption. So I mean that's an interesting piece as well. You know, it's Massachusetts is Massachusetts. You know, it's an interesting market, and yeah, I think it's going to work out good.
Thank you so much, Kyle. And now Mason in Oregon, I want to say that the THC style lounges are kind of more aligned with what Kyle's experiencing in Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken. But Mason, your bar takes a completely different stance with CBD focus. So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Oregon has a really rich history with social consumption spaces in cannabis. The world famous Cannabis Cafe was one of the first sort of private club style cafe destinations in Portland about a little over a decade ago, and there have been others in that model. There still exists that model, the private club model here for adult use. However, adult use social consumption infrastructure was very close to coming to fruition a couple years ago. There were a lot of advocates pushing the bill. It ended up getting shut down. There were too many public health advocates opposing that made a really compelling case. And at the time, the bill being considered really put its stake down in indoor combustion. And so, unfortunately, that bill didn't go forward. There wasn't enough area for common ground to be found. And so Oregon is a bit behind now on social consumption for the adult use market. About a year ago, we decided we really wanted to try out a concept and demonstrate how responsible social consumption could look, a new model for when folks come back to the table and try to pass a bill here in Oregon, using it as a model of what that concept could look like. So Hemp Bar, we only sell hemp products, federally compliant hemp products, and that allows it to be an all ages venue. We've modeled it as a cafe or bar. We have a big custom built bar, a very small merchandising area where you can purchase flower, pre-rolls, edible products, all infused with full spectrum hemp or federally compliant hemp. And then the real draw for our space is our mocktail program. So we have bartenders. You walk up to the bar, you order a beverage, you can get it with or without cannabinoids added, and we have CBG and CBD, trace amounts of THC, and federally compliant hemp umbrella. And it's been a really interesting experience building that model and helping folks sort of imagine what a cannabis lounge could look like that feels a lot like a bar or a restaurant or cafe, less intimidating than say a windowless private club that they might have experienced 10 years ago. And I'm really hopeful that we'll see both public health advocates, legislators, and folks in the industry come back to the table here soon in Oregon and get something passed that will accommodate a responsible social consumption model here in Oregon.
Thanks so much, Mason. I'd like to pivot now to design and build out considerations. This is a conversation I think I've had with each of you, that these lounges can look and take different forms and feels and therefore provide different experiences for the consumer. So maybe Kyle, if you don't mind starting, what are some of the design and build out considerations that a prospective consumption lounge or private membership club owner should keep in mind, and also just keeping in mind some of those nuances to like back of house space for prep and clean, the things that the consumers don't see?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's interesting what Mason said. So we actually got the idea. My brother went to a private club located in Colorado, and like Mason said, it was dark, dingy, and it was not somewhere I would take my fiance. Right? It was when we brought the idea back to Massachusetts, we kind of wanted it to be a welcoming space, but also comfortable, right? Where somewhere where, traditionally that I feel like the cannabis community hasn't had that type of space in Massachusetts, at least. So we wanted to provide a safe place where you could come and consume in a relaxed environment. Myself, I'm 32 years old. I'm not going to the club on Friday night. It's just not happening anymore. But I still want to go out. So we were looking at a place where I could go socialize and interact with other like-minded individuals, but not feel like loud music and strobe lights, a relaxing environment. So in terms of design consideration, we have all hardwood, we have a lot of barn board, a welcoming modern industrial type feel. This is actually one of the couches that we took out of the lounge. We have a game room that has, a bunch of board games. It has several leather couches where you can sit and enjoy. We have dartboard. We also have a big space in the back where it's like a bar, but there's no drinks being served. So there's the front of the lounge and then there's the back of the lounge. And the back of the lounge is more of like a smoking, combustion, hangout, socialize area. And then the front of the lounge is more of like a coffee shop vibe where we have several high tops. We have some low tables. That's where we serve all our food and beverages. We started making, like you said, like the back of the house. So during COVID, we needed a food prep license to actually be able to open. So we built a bar. And so when we now serve all sorts of coffee, tea, milkshakes, Hot Pockets, Capri Suns, everything that you could imagine, right? And it's interesting because we never really thought of that in the concept. We kind of were going for just prepackaged food where we'd sell, chips, packaged food, right? And so now taking into all those considerations, where do we prep the food? Where do we store the food? Where do we clean the food? And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that where it's not cannabis focused like Sara brought up. It's hospitality focused. Essentially we're opening a restaurant, right? And I've never run a restaurant. So it's, so it was a big learning curve. And I think we don't have a lot of inventory. We keep the inventory small. The prep area is small. It's pretty much an open concept. And then obviously we do allow our members to rent out different glassware, right? Whether it be a bong, a rig, just different types of paraphernalia, right? I hate to use that word, but that's what it is, right? And how do we clean those, because that's a huge concern, and when we were looking at opening this, that was kind of always in our model, but there was really no regulation around cleaning a bong for consumption, right? Like that wasn't written in the model. So we kind of took our own approach and we have a whole separate area behind the counter. So we pretty much have two areas. We have one for the food and drinks and beverages. And then we have another for like all the smoking paraphernalia, right? Whether it be the rigs, the bongs, the rolling papers, and like candy, right? And behind that area, there's a separate sink where we clean all that stuff. And so really taking that into consideration, how you want to set it up from the beginning. So then you're not in the middle of COVID trying to find out where you fit these two large freezers, it's interesting. It's an evolving thing in Massachusetts, and I think that as it evolves, there'll be more of a standard, but I really try to pride ourselves on like the cleanliness. We really want that welcoming space where it's like, it's not that stereotypical cannabis user, where it's, I feel comfortable bringing my fiance or my mother there, and they're both able to enjoy the space, and how you set it up in that welcoming environment, I think is really important. So. Yeah.
Absolutely, Kyle. And I saw somebody provided you a kudos on your milkshakes at the Summit Lounge. So,
I was against the milkshakes, and my manager, I eat ice cream every night, which is weird, right? And then she's like, we should make milkshakes. And I'm like, 21 plus, no one's going to want milkshakes. And she was like, they're going to want these milkshakes. And they're pretty extensive. It's interesting to see how even the menu evolves over time. And like I said, we really try to focus on our membership, and we're membership driven, right? So what they want is what we cater to, and that's kind of how we work it. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Customer first always wins. Mason, how about you? You're sitting against the backdrop of your consumption lounge at the moment. So if you could just share a little bit about some of the design and build out considerations at the Hemp Bar.
Yeah, we wanted to make a space that was really inviting, stylish, place that people want to hang. That's an alternative to alcohol bar and a coffee shop, a truly social afternoon, evening space that would be destination worthy. And so in our build out, we worked with an interior designer and our creative director in-house here, kind of put their brains together and worked with a lot of local artists. We were able to build out a beautiful reclaimed walnut bar with a local contractor. This wallpaper here in the back is made by a local artist as well. And we really tried to combine warmth and style in a space that people really wanted to be in and would be comfortable, but also shift a little bit of that paradigm around what a cannabis consumption space could be. It took us about 4 months or so to build out the space. It's probably very similar to the build out of any small format bar. Very similar infrastructure with, soda gun, commercial dishwasher, bar, tables, nice lighting, plants, all that sort of stuff. Of course, the wrinkle is how we serve infused food and beverages here, and incorporating methods that would make sure that people are getting what they pay for in formats that work. We're lucky in that we have one of our own branded emulsified tinctures that we've worked on for years that is sonicated and emulsified cannabinoids, and it was a natural ingredient that we could use to help inform our beverage program. And right before we hopped in this session, Sara made a really good point that I think one of the more interesting questions around social consumption as these laws get put in place in different states is what do we do about edibles? Because everyone's had that experience with edibles where you go from 0 to 100 by accident. And I think that beverages offer a really nice path forward there, especially single serving, beverages that can really mimic, beverages are the social edible, if you will. And we've seen that really resonate with folks here. People have gotten really comfortable because it's such a familiar thing. It's such a social activity to drink tea or to drink a beer with someone is such a natural social activity. Drinking beverages, it's a really nice gateway into social consumption. So that was what we made as the sort of the center point for Hemp Bar. And the food program has been pretty light. We decided to not make that the main draw and have it just keep it light. We have a sort of wine bar, charcuterie, plant-based charcuterie program here that has done quite well. Little snack boards, and then light grab and go and finger food. Lastly, the retail portion, while it's small, it's mighty. We have a really curated selection of products, edible products like gummies, tincture products, flower, pre-rolls, infused beverages. The one unique thing that we were able to pull off, because we're a farm-based business that's been around for a long time, we have a lot of product maker partners that use our hemp to make their branded products, and we have some sort of larger mainstream, if you will, natural products company partners like Gaia Herbs and Rogue Brewing Company and Brew Dr. Kombucha and Dr. Bronner's. These folks make products with our hemp. So our curated retail area, at first glance, there's a lot of brands that people would recognize from the grocery store, but the magic here is that they're infused with our cannabinoids. And so it's also just another bridge for people to help them feel comfortable and feel like a really normal, social setting to be in. And just have that little switch, that flip switch, go where they're also consuming cannabis. I'll give you, I don't know if this will work very well, but just a very small scan here of Hemp Bar. We're closed on Tuesdays, but you can get a sense for the size and style here. And then of course we have an outdoor seating area where all the combustion happens here. So we are complying with the Clean Indoor Air Act, but still can provide that safe, comfortable area for people to have a mocktail and smoke a pre-roll.
Certainly, absolutely. Sara, you operate lounges in multiple different states. Could you share about the experiences that you're looking to curate in each of those as far as design and build out goes?
Yeah, totally. I think I'm separating it a little bit in terms of like front of house and back of house.
Mhm.
For front of house, the design and build out, we created one of our spaces to be called a smokeasy. We didn't want to use the term speakeasy because it's very much connected with alcohol. So we used the term smokeasy to kind of create more or less a enclosed VIP space for those who might not want to consume in front of a lot of other people. Cannabis makes you react differently than alcohol. So kind of separating the spaces to fit all people's experience was a big factor for us. In terms of build out, though, I would say, one of our biggest factors was a smoke eater or the ventilation system. And we've actually included those in both of our spaces. We were told the one that we had would work great for both, but we just wanted to be overly cautious. A lot of the times people are coming in as well and saying, like, I don't want to smell like cannabis when I leave. So our smoke eaters are really there to suck all of that air out, the smoke out, and kind of push it outside. There has been, in terms of design, there have been some cities that are not as open with all of the smoke coming outside. So then there's other companies who are coming in to provide scents within your HVAC system to eliminate the smell of cannabis. Another build out for front of house, I would say, is the name of the game here is still turning tables. Although, we aren't a dispensary anymore, we're a lounge. If you have a 90-minute table limit, that's really where your revenue stream is coming from, 90 minutes to 2 hours. We are doing cannabis sales table side as well as device rentals table side. We don't charge for any of our devices. They are a true try before you buy experience. But we wanted to just make sure that we had the appropriate seating for some of these spaces. If you have food in your lounge, as well as bongs, joints, rolling papers, it's creating this new type of mess at the table. So it's really important that table spacing is often an afterthought, but very important once you're building these out. And just like, appropriate, comfortable seating. The biggest feedback that we get in terms of design from front of house is that people just want to feel comfortable when they're high. And so, we can't create bars that have these small little wooden or these small little bar stools. Now we need bar stools that are comfortable with backs on them because, people who consume cannabis need to feel like safe and comfortable. And then shifting kind of towards back of house, we've faced some challenges because, West Hollywood had a coffee bar and they had food and water coming out of a bar in the middle of their lounge. The state considers water and ice to be food production. Therefore, they said food production cannot be produced in an area where there is physical smoke. So therefore, a lot of these models, their back of house is almost like a delivery service of sorts from food that's coming from back of house to be delivered into the consumption lounge. So as these are being built out, the food prep area is really important to keep back of house for health department purposes. But then also we have, a really big opportunity here with cannabis devices. We go through 99.9% isopropyl alcohol by the gallon. We have a 60-gallon tank in our lounge because we see a device such as student glass gets used 15, 20, 30 times a day. So in order to make sure that's cleaned and that the back of house area doesn't smell like ISO, or maybe, if we were cleaning behind a bar, we've had people in the past say like, oh, it smells like alcohol out here. So we're very conscious when we're building these out to make sure that all of the cleaning is in a separate space where you cannot smell the ISO or maybe the harsh chemicals that are used to clean these devices. And it's a little bit more separate from the food production. And then I guess another layer on top of that is a lot of these high-tech devices need to be charged. So now we have separate charging stations that live in the back with all of the little small supplies that are, expected to come with these devices. So we're separating them, and instead of having one back of house now, we essentially have two or sometimes three.
Certainly. All very interesting points and things, as you mentioned, Sarah, that could very easily become an afterthought. That's important for any lounge prospective owner or operator to think of beforehand and accommodate for that very important space while keeping customer experience top of mind. I want to get to our audience Q&A here shortly, and there are so many amazing questions that have been coming through. So I'm going to try to very quickly get through the rest of mine so we can pivot to that. But really here, I think, is one of the biggest. What are some of your strategies for attracting and retaining customers, or in Kyle's case, members? Maybe Sarah, can you start with that one?
Sure. I would say the first one for us, like I mentioned, is we do a try before you buy experience on our devices. A Puffco is $600. If you've never experienced a true Puffco, consumption experience, then you might be a little hesitant to go out and buy it for, $600. Our point is that you come in, you get a full service experience that's happening table side, so that if you absolutely love that device, we will give you a discount in our retail store. It's really bringing people in because, we're seeing a difference in the way that they purchase. We have Puffcos available and Dr. Dabber switches available. And these people are coming in and seeing that, and then they're buying concentrates. So we're seeing that their purchasing is actually changing based on what we have available for them to try. Another massive piece for us is terpene education and training. We have 1,000 SKUs on our menu in the dispensary. There's no possible way we can actually go through, a process of ordering at the table without it taking 20, 30 minutes sometimes. So we kind of stay education forward. We have terpenes and we have certain strains that we like to promote in the lounge. We also do a coffee program, but if you are serving coffee and then you also have a jack, you might feel very racy, or it might cause you to feel a little anxious. So our education piece is really based on leading customers down a path that's right for them, and asking the right questions and providing the whole table side experience so that you feel, like it makes you want to come back. It makes you want to, gain that experience and that education again and again. And then kind of adding to that, events, activations. We did an exclusive strain drop on 420 in the lounge. That was really exciting for people and definitely brought them in on that day. And I think that it's just, the biggest thing here is going to be education. Seems like everyone is so interested and curious, and they have a drive, a passion to learn more. We just have to be there and ready to provide that on-site experience, and they'll definitely keep coming back.
Certainly. Kyle, how about you?
So we're a smaller business. There's literally me and Alicia. We just hired a third person. So we really try to focus on that social connection, that personal interaction, and providing that type of experience that, like, you're not going to a big business. You're coming to a small family-owned private club where we just want you to be happy, and really honing in on what each individual member, what's their wants and needs, what do they want out of their club, where we want to create the space that you want to be in, so how do we, so when I say we're membership driven, we really focus on that, where we make those personal connections with each individual member, and how we can grow the business that way is we don't do any marketing. The biggest problem that we have is people are like, we had no clue you existed. And that's how we want it. We want it to be small. We want it to be private. We want you to feel like you're part of something special, which you are, and I think our membership appreciates that. And that's what continues them to come back. And then in doing that, they feel so welcome that they tell their friends and their family about it, which then brings new members in, and then we have events that provide the members with an opportunity to meet other members, and just focusing on that personal connection. I feel like that's lost in the age of big business, and how do you really serve your consumers, your membership, and they, as much as some nights I want to just be sitting on the couch and I don't want to be there till 2 a.m. on a Friday night, to see the owner behind the counter cleaning the dishes and cleaning the bongs, like I think that adds a personal touch that, that a lot of our membership, where we're still small, we're able to do that, and I think that keeps a lot of people coming back, and then when we don't focus on cannabis as like, we don't focus on the portion of social consumption where it comes to cannabis. We focus more on the experience that we're providing the individual, that for me, like I brought up earlier, I've been smoking weed since I was 14. I don't currently consume anymore, but weed is weed, it's cannabis is cannabis, and that's not what social consumption is about for us. It's about that experience that you're getting when you come into one of these establishments, and that's really what we try to strive for. And then I think that's what allows us to be successful and hopefully in the future hold market share, where people come in, they know the lounge, they know the brand, they know that it has that personal touch, and they appreciate that, so that's kind of how we retain and gain new members. It's all word of mouth. It's you're cool, we want to provide you a cool space, and then you tell your cool friend about it and they come there too. And that's how we build. So
certainly a lot of common threads, I think, being pulled in terms of education and exclusivity, whether it's, to be exclusive to come or the exclusive discount that you're offering at the table. All of those things are extremely important. Mason, how about you? What are some of the ways that you're attracting and retaining customers in your space?
Yeah, attracting, when we set out with Hemp Bar, we really defined who we thought the audience would be and went out and tried to find those folks and welcome them in. So we have 4 sort of personas of folks that we're really trying to try the space out. One, first and foremost, our local community. So we did an old school door knocking campaign where we actually printed out little flyers for 50% off and walked up and down the streets around Hemp Bar. It's a residential neighborhood that has lots of single family homes and a very diverse neighborhood in Southeast Portland as well. So that was really fun because we got a lot of curious neighbors that came in. Number 2, we're very involved in the adult use cannabis community in Oregon. We were one of the first licensed farms here, and just very, very deeply involved in the tight-knit community here. And so we wanted to make a space because most dispensaries are not exactly social spaces. We wanted to make a space for the industry itself. It's a very large employer, collectively, a large industry here in Portland. And so we've sort of taken the restaurant bar model where Mondays, we're open on Mondays, and that's our service industry day. So we have sort of exclusive discounts for folks that work in the cannabis industry, want to come and hang out. And that has been really successful. And then the last 2 are people interested in plant-based vegan things. We decided from the outset that we wanted to make this a plant-based spot. So we have all plant-based foods and drinks. And that has made us a nice destination combining cannabis and plant-based things. And then lastly, tourists, of course. And, during COVID, that's been a little slow. We expect it to tick up quite a bit this summer. Folks coming into Oregon, maybe looking to experience some Oregon cannabis. This is a unique stop on their travel. So that's, attraction is just really kind of classic marketing, identifying who we think would enjoy the space and really trying to reach out and talk to them. And then once people are here, retention is all about education, which is right in line with the theme that Kyle and Sara mentioned. We want to create a really rich experience that empowers people to, have a good time and safely. And, we found that referrals, people telling their friends and people coming back is easily the biggest driver of our, attendees at this point. People who just love the experience. They tell their friends about the cool wallpaper or the delicious mocktail they had, and they come back the next weekend or tell their friends about it. So our retention strategy, we do have some loyalty programs and discounts, and we do some exclusive, flower cultivar drops here and things like that for sure. But mostly it's trying to make a really nice experience with education at the forefront and rely on that referral and loyalty folks to return to have another good time.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to skip a couple of my questions and go straight to my last one. I'm realizing very quickly now we should have done a 2-hour webinar on this topic, but I'm seeing a lot of questions filter through about safety. So people asking things like, what kind of consumer behavior have you witnessed in your establishments? Do you address things like people driving to and from your establishments? Just some of these very broad concerns about consumption or overconsumption. So maybe Sara, I see you nodding. If you don't mind starting, what has been some of your experience in terms of maintaining the safety of your establishments?
Totally. So West Hollywood started off, we did a 2-hour time limit because we really wanted to provide, we did a 90-minute time limit because we really wanted to provide people a safe place to consume, while I was also saying turning tables. Once we went to Illinois to kind of promote this same model, their questions were no longer about time limits. They were about getting in a car. So we said, okay, in Illinois or in LA, most people are walking, they're Ubering, they're getting dropped off. In Illinois, every single person is driving to this location. So the city alone was asking us, what we intended to do about that. The very first thing we did was we implemented this 15 to 30-minute time limit, which is basically like a buffer between the last time you consume and before you get in your car. Not always ideal and not something we wanted to implement, but we do understand people don't know what they don't know, and we have to start low and show them the way. So about 15 to 20 minutes before your scheduled timing is up, an employee will kind of, pop by your table in advance, mind you, because we are mainly reservation based. We have a system in place where when you book to a reservation, it'll give you a lot of info about the space itself, what we allow, what we don't allow, the time limits, what you can bring in versus not, the experience. And then you're also kind of like check marking off like, yes, I agree to the terms and conditions. It's kind of silly. Alcohol is way more intense and we don't do that in bars, but they're making us do it in these lounges. So we are complying because we just want people to feel safe and comfortable. So first and foremost, we do the 30-minute time limit. We'll just stop by and say, hey, we've got about 30 minutes left on your reservation. Do you guys have a driver this evening? Usually somebody will be like, oh yeah, that's me. And we're like, great, and that's kind of our opportunity to really act as a bartender and like gauge how they're feeling. How do they look? Are they active? Do they seem rather sleepy? And during that time, we have amino acids, we have sugars, we have caffeine. We have a lot of complimentary items that we offer them just to make sure that they are totally good to go again before they get in their car. I was mentioning to the guys earlier, we did see about 8 to 10 people pass out per week at the Cannabis Cafe on site. This was in large part due to edibles, or it was due to people who were drinking before they came on site. You can't really do much when someone is showing up to your establishment drunk. So we really tried to train our security staff to look for things like that. Also, a couple of these models do have, alcohol in a separate area and cannabis sales in another area. So if you have a 2-hour time limit, imagine consuming with your friends, running outside to chug a beer or drink a beer, and then coming back to your reservation. Your server has no clue what you just did in that other space. Therefore, she's continuing to serve you as you're, getting what they say crossfaded. So I would just say removing alcohol from the equation is a big start. There will be spaces in time. I unfortunately do foresee that kind of being the future of a lot of these lounges, but giving cannabis consumers a safe space for just us, in the beginning, I think would help a lot. Looking out for signs of intoxication. If it's first timers and new consumers, I don't think it's, too much to be asking like your tolerance levels or, have you taken your daily medication for the day? We had a doctor pass out and totally freaked out the whole venue, and he had just forgotten to take his medication for the day, and cannabis cause a negative reaction. So we're really trying to stay ahead of all the protocols and procedures that need to be in place for this, while also just trying to please the city to show them, this is safe. We've got it under control. It's really just about controlling the space more than anything else. And then, kind of working in time to maybe relieve those 30-minute limits where, okay, people are leaving your establishment constantly. We haven't had any issues. We no longer need that 30-minute grace period, essentially, is what we're pushing for right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for expounding on that. Like I mentioned, many, many questions about that. Can I also just ask, because we've had several questions come in about this particular topic, which is insurance. Are there any types of special insurance coverages that any or all of you employ to risk mitigate the business?
So,
Open to anyone.
Yeah, so we have, so with us being not a cannabis business, we're not required to get any special insurance, and we don't have a liquor license. We do allow BYOB, but we just have regular insurance, just like a bar. You know, we don't need that type of insurance because once again, we're not providing anything, but we have it just to be safe, on the safe side. God forbid something does happen, you know, and so we just have regular liability insurance and then business insurance, you know, workers' comp, all the normal business policies. But I'm sure there is, I know I have seen some specific to the cannabis space, and as we transition to more of a social consumption model, then would probably look at getting new insurance.
And we did have insurance in West Hollywood that was pretty specific for the lounge. I actually don't know who that went through. It was kind of out of my lane, but we definitely had it.
Great. Kyle, a lot of people have been asking about your membership structure at the Summit Lounge. Could you share a little bit more about that, such as length of time, the cost, anything else that goes into the actual membership that consumers should be mindful of?
Yeah, so the way we structured the lounge is, so everyone gets a lifetime membership for free, right? So, and then we charge per use of the visit, per use of the facilities, right? So if you're a regular member, right, we're open Wednesday through Saturday from 5 to 11. Those are our normal hours, right? Any member can walk in, right? Now with that, every member gets the option to rent out the lounge for other members, right? So every single person that comes into the lounge gets a lifetime membership, right? And then we charge use fees on top of that, right? So on a regular Wednesday night when we don't have an event going on, it's just a $10 use fee. You come in, pay me $10, hang out, smoke some weed, enjoy yourself, right? Now on like a night, we have everything from bingo, comedy shows, game nights, industry nights, networking, paint classes. I mean, the list goes on and on. We have a million events, right? And those vary in price, right? Like our comedy show is a $20 use fee. So we recommend that you get tickets in advance. You pay the $20, you come in, that's your use fee for the evening, right? Now we have another, where we started offering food. We have another member who does, who's fully surf safe and all that at a rest and owns their own restaurant. They come in and prepare food for the other members, and then they pair it with like a strain of either concentrate or flower, right? And that event can cost up to $100, right? So it's really depending on the night, the event. There's a lot that goes into it, but the base membership is free for everyone, and it's a lifetime membership. So that's kind of the structure around the membership and the use fees and stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for expounding on that.
I see the questions at the bottom, and like every other one, it's like, what's the membership cost?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm trying to keep up as well. A lot of folks also are asking, and I know Sarah touched on this briefly, but about the ventilation system. Are there any other types of details that anyone here can provide about what are some of the ventilation considerations within the space?
So, I mean, Mason, if Mason wants to, I can go. I'll go. All right. So pretty much, so Worcester was very particular that they didn't want it going into the air, and there really isn't. So we're in a very interesting regulatory framework where we're not. I hate to say we're not regulated, but we're self-regulated, right? So a lot of the stuff that we do is based on like our morals, you know. So like the city, there's no ventilation requirements for a private membership association, right? And there's no ventilation requirements for a social consumption establishment because they're just non-existent, right? There is cigar bars, hookah lounges, and there are ventilation requirements for those, right? Which when we talk to them, you know, it goes back to a healthy dialogue with your municipality or your regulatory body, right? And when we were talking with Worcester, you know, the current regulations for tobacco smoking establishments didn't really make sense to them for this type of establishment. So what we ended up doing is we have 4 industrial smoke heaters where they turn over the air in our space. I think it's 7 times in 15 minutes if you do like the cubic airspace and all this math equations, right? And so we have 4 of those throughout the space, and I would be remiss to say that it doesn't get quite smoky in there at some points. It does, but if you wait, you know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes after everyone stops smoking, it clears the space right away, you know. And then we're also located below 6 condos. So it's funny because a family of 5 literally lives right above us. So obviously we don't want them or their children smelling cannabis smoke, like that's just not being a good neighbor, so we really focus on like weather stripping around all the doors, and then that, just keep regular maintenance of the smoke eaters, changing the HEPA filters, changing the carbon filters, and just constantly staying on top of that. And then it comes back to a healthy dialogue, where if there is a complaint, we address it and we mitigate it to the best of our ability, and just try to be good, healthy neighbors, But that's, smoke eaters.
Thank you. Anything anyone else would like to add on the topic of ventilation? Like I said, there were so many questions that came in about it, so I wanted to make sure we addressed it.
I also just know that the company we use, I think, is called Smoke Eaters. I don't really know too much about it, but it's kind of back to the municipal requirements. I saw a question about that. Some people are just requiring you get certain things, and it really just depends on city, versus city.
Yeah. It's funny. So when we were looking at the smoke eaters, they were all way out of our budget. So there's a bowling alley in my town, and they actually bought brand new smoke eaters when you could smoke in bowling alleys, and they were just sitting in the ceiling. And the guy's like, $1,000, you take them out of the ceiling, you can have them all. And we went and got 8 of them and put them all over the lounge, and they work great. It's they are older, so it's kind of hard to get filters for them. But if you look around, you can find them, and there are some amazing new systems out there. Once again, as we look forward to transitioning to an actual social consumption establishment, if Massachusetts does allow combustion, which they need to, then we'll be looking at some newer, updated models. Which that's a good company that you mentioned.
Absolutely. So we have one other question that I think would be interesting to note on. And again, something Sara mentioned briefly earlier is the requirements around security. As you mentioned, kind of security is kind of keeping track, and so are the servers kind of keeping track of the people. But how does the whole security system look like from beginning to end of when a consumer enters and exits one of your lounges? Sara, if you can expound on that.
Yeah, I mean, considering that we are connected to dispensaries, that's a lot different for us. We have a ton of limited access and restricted access zones. So, we have to have a lot of security guards in place for that. We also took it upon ourselves in Lowell to have security guards near exits, because people get high and they just don't know what they're doing, and they'll try to walk out a door that they shouldn't be exiting from. And then it's also important to know that in West Hollywood, the bathroom, the kitchen, and the lounge all had its separate addresses. So we needed to kind of staff security in a way that you could leave the lounge, walk around to the bathroom, be escorted back in, and not be super confused by the process. So we hired security guards mainly for obviously doors and making sure that people aren't leaving and exiting, but we also kind of doubled them up, and we hired a couple trained paramedics that were also security teams. And that was really important for us because of the overconsumption piece. It was just really, really helpful to have a security guard that all my servers could go to and say, hey, this person looks like they may have overconsumed. There's a trained paramedic / security guy that's standing there kind of looking over, evaluating the space and kind of acting as the overconsumption, a person of sorts, because they had already been trained on that. So when I'm helping other license holders, I do kind of encourage them to work with security teams that come from hospitality, because they know what all drugs look like and they know how to handle people in those environments, but they also usually are trained paramedics. So it's kind of like a double whammy, because you are getting a little bit more of the support on that front as well.
Sure, certainly. One more question that we have, then we can quickly wrap. We have a lot of questions kind of coming in around this single serving limit, and how do you distribute that single serving limit, and are people allowed to leave with unfinished product and these types of things? So Mason, maybe you can start here, and if you can just kind of provide any clarity on how things work at the hemp bar.
Yeah, it's a little unique for us, right? Because we have very low THC products. Most of our products are made with full spectrum or are, the actual hemp plant that has trace amounts of THC. So it's sort of self-enforcing, single serving from an intoxication standpoint for our products. It's pretty straightforward. Speaking more broadly, though, I think Sara mentioned this before we jumped on. I think that the model that will likely get picked up and really spread across the country is the direction that Nevada is going, which is focused on, basically the bar approach. You can't walk up to a bar in most states and order a bottle of liquor. You have to order a single shot or a cocktail or a single beer, sometimes two, one for you and a friend, right? And so that model seems like the most likely model that will go forward and be adopted long term as each state tries different things out. Again, it's a little bit self-enforcing at our spot. We have had a couple of issues with consumption, even though we have very low THC levels here. Some people are very sensitive to THC, myself included, and some people are really sensitive to CBD and CBG as well. And luckily, we haven't had any really challenging issues, but we've had some moments where people seem to have overconsumed, and we need to intervene there, because safety is number one for us. We really want people to have a safe experience and come and go safely as well. Last thought on the single serving thing, we do sell whole packages of full spectrum products that people can purchase, consume, take when they go. For instance, we have a full spectrum tincture that it's federally compliant, but that tincture bottle has like 40 or 50 milligrams of THC in it. So if someone did choose to drink that whole thing, they could get really, really intoxicated. And luckily that hasn't been an issue for us yet. It's not something that we police, but it's definitely on my mind, long term. We gotta be mindful of that. And we may end up instituting a policy where some items are to go only, if they do contain a significant amount of THC.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so very much for taking the time and expounding on all of these topics surrounding private membership clubs and social consumption lounges. This has been an excellent discussion. I want to share my screen again really quickly to share with you all the promo code for Cannabis Conference, which is coming up this August 23rd through the 26th. In Las Vegas, we'll have more than 40 sessions, 90 plus expert speakers, 230 exhibitors. If you want more education just like this in person, please join us at the show. We have a big pricing deadline that's coming up this Friday at midnight on April 29th. And the promo code that you see here is exclusive to this webinar. It's Social 10. That code expires on Friday at midnight as well. So Mason is a part of our Cannabis Conference in person. He will actually be speaking from his cultivation capacity as a panelist and moderator on the session, Innovative and Regenerative Growing Techniques. So again, just want to make sure that you guys don't miss it. And I want to thank our panelists today. Thank you all so very much. We appreciate your time and consideration to share your expertise with our audience. Again, it's been fantastic, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.